fool me. I will wait. I will wait. Or you can fool me. I will wait.
You're listening to Grace, Geltman, and Weld on the Hammer Factor. Take it away, boys.
Did you guys read over the show notes?
The beeping isn't too annoying.
Is it bad? Is it horrible?
No, it's nice. It's a nice texture to the.
Okay. Well, let's get into it. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Welcome to Hammer Factor 38, the Weld's Back in Town edition. I want to introduce my co-host here, Louis Geltman, North Fork champion, policy director for the Outdoor Alliance. Can you hear me? Or is that going to be too much? Is that going to be too over the top?
I can hear you. I can hear some nice beeping noises. It's like the smoke detector going off or something.
Dude, we just blew a transformer. I am hanging on to battery power here throughout this
You can't
podcast.
have too many more of these like lo-fi episodes or people are going to start peeling off.
Right.
Well, they should have peeled off a long time ago. Also back from overseas, John Weld, father of two, and whitewater legend. Welcome back. And I think I'm going to have to end that right
there. You're breaking up. There's beeping in the background. I can almost smell smoke coming through this microphone here from your studio apartment or wherever the hell you're in.
Is that better? Is that better?
Who knows?
All right, well, let's roll with it. So, how was your trip? Welcome back, John. Fill us in. We made it without you, but it wasn't the same.
It was fine. It was fine. Yeah, I'm still. Well, I'm actually over the jet lag, so I'm good. I'm ready to roll. I came back. The Hammer Factor studios weren't too much of a mess.
Yeah, we had
Someone tell Shane he needs to get off the sofa and go home.
Well,
pick up the beer cans.
Shane has left, but he did a good job. Thanks for Shane coming on. But I tell you, he ranted on the Hammer Factor He ranted about the Hammer Factor on the Hammer Factor. So that's kind of
dare
a
him.
first. That's kind of a first.
What? How dare he? What was he ranting about? I didn't hear it.
He was kind of ranting about you and you making fun of freestyle.
Me?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah, you.
I don't think I could be singled out for that, but no, it wasn't. I like freestyle. I just like freestyle boats. To be clear.
Okay, well said.
I think coming on the Hammer Factor and ranting about the Hammer Factor is well within bounds.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, it was actually really good. Did you guys? So I had to do just due to scheduling and whatnot. I had to record the Keem Fontenay interview, world champion freestyle, separately. Did you guys have a chance to listen to that?
I did not. Didn't realize you'd done that. How was he?
He was really good, man. He's got a pretty cool story. He's basically, for all intents and purposes, for a world champion, unsponsored. He just goes to the university. His kayaking pretty much consists of getting out of class and going to the local canal and practices his freestyle and whatever, and he just came in and beat the best in the world. So he was cool.
Cool. Get on him.
Had some really good insight. So I asked him what he was most fired up about the sport, and he was ready to go do some exploring, go do some shit running. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. Right answer.
Cool. I look forward to listening to it.
Well, let's get right into the show. But before we do, top of the show sponsor. Our first sponsor ever, huge shout out to Canoe and Kayak. Canoe and Kayak has been leading the paddle sports media game for 45 years, reaching an audience of nearly 500,000 people with in-depth articles like the one that we went over last week that I want to touch on a little bit, the Grand Canyon Escalade Project. Check them out at canoekayak.com. So, something interesting. about that article that we discussed a little bit last week, Lewis, about that opinion piece.
About Bears Ears or about
the
Grand Canyon Escalade?
About Bears
Right.
Ears. And the San Juan River and whatnot. And I was talking to the guys, Dave Shively over there at Canoe and Kayak, and he pointed me to, and there was a crazy amount of paddlers that were very pro this move. It was really interesting. He sent me to a discussion on their Facebook page. You should go check that out, Lewis, because there was, I mean, I wish that all those people who were commenting had listened to the Hammer Factor, because a lot of the stuff that they were talking about was just misinformation, you know. So I don't know how to get people informed, but that was what I saw on that chat.
We should maybe we'll check it out and we can explain to them why they're wrong on the next Hammer Factor.
That's kind of what we do, isn't it?
We just lump them together with the like 0 degree offset and 198 length paddle people. Sport boaters, play boaters,
offset and
flat earthers,
198 paddles. Should we talk about the amazing piece of artwork that we got from Andrew Miller?
Yeah, did you? Well, that didn't make it in the show notes either. I'm gonna have to.
I mean, what are you supposed to say about it? I mean,
I thought it was really
I know
good.
Andrew Miller's going to think some kind of I'm on some like anti-Andrew Miller conspiracy here, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so last week Grace and I threw out the call for T-shirt art, and I described my beautiful dream of a T-shirt featuring Ryan Zinke standing on a sup that says Zinke sups on it.
I did not know that. You see, I didn't know that part of the story. I just thought that was something that was floating around that Andrew Miller had sent us.
No, I had in my head, but don't have anywhere near the artistic chops to create on my own. And Andrew Miller created it, and it's awesome. I hope that we're going to make this into a T-shirt. But if either way, we need to make some stickers. Like this sticker needs to be plastered up on BLM signs across the West, as far as I'm concerned.
I'd like to see like a sticker of like Zinke water skiing on baby coffins in Lake Powell. Something like that.
This one is more on brand for the Hammer Factor.
Be careful what you wish for, because Lewis's dream T-shirt just popped up in the inbox. So
can we make this shirt?
Yeah,
I want that on the back, and then Hammer Factor like on the front, just like on the breast or whatever.
I'm down to do it. Well, we'll put it up. We'll put it up online and let the viewers decide. But I thought, we should do it if we sell like. We should do it like a Kickstarter. If we sell like 20 shirts or whatever, we'll print them. Because we can print like a 2 dozen shirts, I think, up here at IR, something like that.
It's like amazingly well rendered. Zinke's expression is just totally on point. The whole thing is, I couldn't be more thrilled. The fact that we just threw this out into the world and then it came back as a fully realized idea like several days later is mind-blowing to me. I'm totally stoked.
I had no idea. I thought that was just some little meme that was floating around that got sent our way. But all right, okay,
you've got to listen, because it was like Lewis was like, "This is what I want. This is what I want for the T-shirt." Like he got the podium. He was like, "Look, I want Ryan Zinke in a cowboy hat on a sup, and I want underneath it to say Zinke sups." And dude, like 3 hours later, it's like right there. So anyway,
who's on today's show?
We'll put it up online. Today we have Josh Pekarik from Verus Kayaks, and I'm not even sure if that's the right way to say that.
It's not Versus.
I mean, right. That's like a little one of those optical illusions where you just glance at it and it appears to be Verus Kayak, which is something I want to ask him about.
Yeah, it's Verus Kayaks. So
he was Verus, if that's how you pronounce it, was the last gladiator of the Roman Empire. I saw it on his website.
I thought you were going to say that it was the last like unclaimed domain name that looked like a word.
Well, we'll be excited to hear about that. He's got a pretty, I had just heard about this company and sent it to you guys when he came out with this.
Had you guys heard anything about this before? So we had a listener write in about it, right? It was what was his name?
What was his name?
Ben Zurich.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, Ben wrote in.
Before you wrote it, had you heard of Verus Kayaks before that?
I had just like that week saw a video of their whitewater boat, the Gladiator. So, anyway. Let's see, we've got an article here. I don't think I read that article.
Which one?
The Washington Post article.
Well, I thought the article was about Patagonia suing Trump over Berzier's Escalante, which I thought was sort of a way to connect the story, or to put an interesting focal point on the story.
What's Zinke's office, Department of the Interior, Lewis?
Yes.
What was the headline that they put on there that they came to the savior to allow people with wheelchairs to recreate in? Did I send that to you?
Oh yeah. Do you want to talk about that? That's a nice thorny one.
Yeah.
The bikes and wilderness issue.
Yeah. Let's kind of talk about that because I thought it was interesting, and I think it's actually really cool that they allowed wheelchairs to go in there.
Every time we come to this part of the show,
or do you want to talk about bikes and wilderness?
Lewis just starts rubbing his eyes and sort of like starts like pushing his hands into his hair.
You guys just go straight for the most. I don't know. All right, what do you want to talk about? You want to talk about?
We do both and just get through them both. Is that possible?
You will take a stab at what you think is the most important that our listeners should understand from this.
I'll give you like a 2-minute monuments thing just because it's kind of entertaining. Which is, I'm sure you guys saw that when Trump came out with the announcement about Bears Ears, Patagonia turned the entire front of their webpage into "The President just stole your land," all in black. Oh, right? Yeah. Did you guys see this?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, it's a little, certainly inflammatory. It's a little bit hyperbolic. It's still federal land, but he did, he rolled back protections, basically. So, I mean, I guess in a sense, he's stealing it because he's stealing control over that land and handing it to the fossil fuel companies. But it does still belong to us. So that messaging is a little... It's a little inflammatory.
Well, on the Natural Resources Twitter page, which is quite spicy, I may add.
Yes.
I mean, this guy's,
that was where
guys are real. There's a real lot going on over there. But they responded by saying that Patagonia is a special interest that makes its products in China. Oh, this was Zinke. No, they said that Patagonia is attempting to sell more products to wealthy, elitist urban dwellers from New York to San Francisco. Was their take on Patagonia, which, to be honest, is kind of accurate, but
no, I don't know. I mean, so they made this little meme that was like copying Patagonia's homepage, and it's like Patagonia's lying to you, don't buy it, which, as someone pointed out, is potentially illegal to be using your government platform to lobby for a boycott of a business. So that's.
I mean, didn't Trump do that with Ivanka and Nordstrom?
Yeah, also illegal. But I mean, the whole thing is it's become sort of sorted. But Patagonia is they're walking the walk. They're really putting up a fight on this thing beyond just putting stuff up on their website. They're litigating it, and I believe that they're on the same lawsuit as Access Fund. He's one of our member organizations who's really leading the charge on this because there are a lot of climbing areas, like really, really premier climbing areas that are losing protections. So, I don't know. I'm with Patagonia. But I'm probably one of those pseudo-wealthy coastal elitists.
Absolutely. And then Zinke was on Fox News, and he said this is where he called Patagonia special interest that makes products in China, and the company should focus on how to bring manufacturing back to the country instead of lying to the public about losing federal land. Well, that's a burn. I mean, I don't know how Patagonia...
I don't even know where to start with that.
Supposed to be charged. Well, yeah. All right.
Well, what about the Department of the Interior homepage that claimed... I mean... It looks to me like they're allowing wheelchairs where Obama would not allow wheelchairs.
So this is not this isn't Interior. This is now we're pivoting to Congress, where Mike McClintock from California is sponsoring this bill to allow mountain bikes in wilderness, which is, so I think a lot of people don't even know that mountain bikes are not allowed in wilderness, but they're not. It's, in the Wilderness Act, it says that mechanized transportation or transport or something is not allowed in wilderness areas. That's been interpreted to include mountain bikes, even though mountain biking wasn't a thing when the Wilderness Act was passed in 1964. Over the years, there have been some wilderness designations that have closed mountain biking trails, and that sits poorly with a lot of mountain bikers. But at the same time, for the conservation community in this country, the Wilderness Act is just like this absolutely wholly untouchable thing. And the idea that somebody would make any changes whatsoever to the Wilderness Act evokes, this extremely emotional reaction that's like, it's just sacrilege. And so that puts, organizations like ours, especially organizations like IMBA, who's our member group, in a really thorny spot, because, there's some subset of the mountain biking community for whom having access to wilderness is really important. And there are other people who sort of see the bigger game here and are like, we need, it's okay that there's some places where mountain bikes aren't allowed, but we have to address this. And so, Outdoor Alliance, we submitted testimony on this bill. And what we're saying is, look, the Wilderness Act has done an unbelievable amount of good. I mean, it's been protected a ton of really, really important places. But at the same time, in recent years, things like what happened in Boulder White Clouds out in Idaho a few years ago, where a couple of like super, super important bike trails got closed by this wilderness designation really unnecessarily, because they could have drawn the wilderness boundaries in a way that left these trails rideable. And, the mountain biking community out there, they worked really closely to try and make that happen. And they kind of got thrown under the bus by some of the conservation organizations at the last minute. And so that's really, created a lot of hard feelings that are very understandable. And so I think what we want to see is just to make sure that as we designate new wilderness areas, that it's being done in a way that's super, super conscientious of mountain biking. And I need to be like cherry stems drawn through wilderness areas to protect existing trails sometimes. If there's trail loss, it needs to be mitigated by building a new trail somewhere else. Mountain bikers have to be at the table in these conversations, and their interests have to be taken seriously. And we have to designate these things collaboratively. You can't just come in and just, slap a wilderness area out there that closes a ton of mountain biking trails, because it's undermining support for the Wilderness Act, which is like just the most core conservation law. And it's not necessary. Right. And so it's just this very difficult issue for us where, there's some tension between recreation groups and conservation organizations, which we don't, that's not a comfortable place for us to be, because we see ourselves as both of those things. Right.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But, the wheelchairs thing, I'm pretty sure that wheelchairs are allowed in the wilderness already under the ADA, and that's just like that's just window dressing for these guys who want to kind of like poke at the Wilderness Act. Yeah. So I don't know. Tough one.
I just think I'm just blown away by the headlines and the comments coming from the government, like, attacks on businesses and, and just, I don't know. It's nuts. It's crazy times.
To be clear, the point is that wheelchairs aren't allowed in wilderness areas because they're mechanized travel.
Yes.
Wilderness. I'm pretty sure that wheelchairs are allowed in wilderness areas, but it's fucking arbitrary, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to have a smartphone and you're in the wilderness, but you're not allowed to have a game cart, I don't know, man. But we can solve this problem without opening up the Wilderness Act, and that's what we need to try to do, at least for the time being.
All right, there you go. OutdoorAlliance.org. Thanks for that, Lewis. You're busy up there doing your thing in Washington. How long are you traveling for?
I'm here through Christmas. I came back. We had the executive directors from the member organizations in town this week to meet with the new chief of the Forest Service, this guy Tony Took. and did some Senate meetings with those guys.
Yeah, you take them out, you go to Hooters, something like that. The boys.
It's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of just how you imagine those DC lobbying trips being.
Oh yeah.
Should we get into some viewer mail? Because we've got a lot of viewer mail. Are we going to do all of these, or am I going to have to kind of skim through a few of these? That one that we just got, I really want to go through with that one. I'm going to throw that one to Lewis. About
a couple of them we go a couple of these pretty quickly. Yeah. To be honest.
What? Okay.
Okay. So very quickly, we had people keep writing about this paddle offset thing, and I understand that the truth is shocking and disappointing to a lot of people out there. And Big Paddle, and we all know who I'm talking about, but Big Paddle's been out there promoting these low offset paddles, and for a decade or more. And people are coming to grips with this, and it's not a cheap change, a transition to make. It usually involves a $300 or so replacement paddle, and people are angry, and they keep writing us about it. But Max Posner and Tyler Hoke, for example, wrote us, once again, concerned about the offset of paddles. They pointed out that Jim Snyder, and we know this, Jim Snyder wrote an article about this and suggested 40 degree, which is a fine step up as you move your way towards 60. I did talk with Jim about coming on the show. He seemed non-committal. Jim's not the kind of guy you want to push, but Jim, if you're listening, give me a shout. We can work it out. We'd love to have you come on.
This should be good news for Big Paddle, as everyone realizes the inadequacy of what they're currently doing and migrating to a contemporary platform.
You think, but in these days it's hard to tell. People do self-destructive things for short-term gain all the time in this environment. So I'm not sure what's going on. If we could have Danny, Danny Mungo is really the person to come on here and blow the lid off this story, because he's no longer with Big Paddle. He's moved on to Big Accessories, or I don't know what they are. Danny, if you're out there, or if you know Danny, because I know he doesn't listen, he's too busy like training for a marathon or something to listen to the show. Bobby Zone Dog Miller. We all know Bobby Zone Dog Miller, right? Zone Dog going back to American Whitewater article days. He wrote in saying that he is a close gripper.
He is a close gripper. I'm not sure how that eluded us when we were having that conversation earlier.
And he calls it a success story, and I do too, in the sense that, close gripping it's a hideous disfigurement that honestly would shake total seclusion, and he's gone on to great things with it. So I applaud him for that. He's a hero. That's a hashtag real heroes right there.
Couple things on that. Number one, I want to give a shout out to the Hammer Factor listeners, because every time that they talk about this paddle offset thing, they cite their references. They're not coming at this argument just with, I don't think so. They're like bringing things off the internet and being like, but we continue to shoot them down. So Zone Dog. Did you guys see Zone Dog's article on Racing the Green?
No.
Oh my God, you have got to read this article. It's so funny. And I haven't read a lot of Zone Dog, but he tells a story in the first, second, and third person. And I'm not sure, but I think the dog, if you have an alter ego, what does that mean in storytelling? Is that it may be 4 parts. It was amazing. It was an amazing story.
He's had this alter ego, the Zone Dog alter ego. But Bobby is a very quiet, very mild-mannered person who's really a really genuinely nice guy. But for years, he wrote this sort of article. He wrote this series of pieces in American Whitewater as Zone Dog, where he was sort of this alpha male, super boater, smack talking individual, and people thought that's the kind of guy he was. And I'm not sure if he actually grooved on the hate or what.
Those were hilarious articles.
I gotta tell you, gotta read this one. You gotta read this one. It's really funny. I posted it on the Green Race Facebook page. But backing up, so Zone Dog. See, this is where we need to help Zone Dog, because Zone Dog, the close gripper can only offer so much success, and he swam in his longboat run. And I looked at the video, and I'm almost 90% sure it was because he was close gripping. It'll work for a short boat. His
forearms are exhausted by the time. by the time he gets to angle left or go left or whatever it is, his forearms are exhausted. they're just scorching hot, right? Like holding a broomstick at the very end with your arm extended.
Oh man, it
seems easy to begin with, but then it quickly saps your will to live, basically.
Anyway, Wes, thanks for that. Thanks for writing that in. There's always time to fix your grip, Zone Dog. There's always time to fix it.
For people that they're suffering from this affliction, I really recommend putting some electrical tape on your paddle to tell you where to put your hands and stick with it. It's an easy problem to solve.
That's right. And you feel your hand slide across electrical tape, and you just sort of nudge them back into the zone.
Like 99 cents, and you can get with the times.
Man, we could almost do a close gripper t-shirt as well.
I think he's got a nice non-T-grip using close grip going on his up there.
Right.
I appreciated that. All the little details are there, man.
All right, let's talk about Sickline, because Sickline rose its ugly head again.
Hang on.
What you said about Sickline.
Hang on.
We already answered.
This was last issue, John.
Just the whole episode.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry. I've been out of it. Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Lewis laid that to rest. So you need to reference if you're worried about Sickline and Lewis's opinion on it, it was brought to the surface. But we did not mention John Crane's email that came to us about the Men's Health article. You want to fill us in on this one, Weld?
Excellent observation. John Crane pointed out this is a Men's Health article, and you can take it for what it is, because Men's Health is basically printed clickbait, right? But it's Pornhub is now sponsoring extreme sports teams a la Red Bull, right? So his question is, will BDP be the first whitewater team supported or sponsored by Pornhub? Seems that Asheville and Hood River will be buzzing about this opportunity. Once again, basically assuming that Asheville and Hood River are essentially Sodom and Gomorrah. But
that opportunity has been brought to the attention of BDP, and I think that in their long-standing record of follow-through and professionalism, it's safe to assume that it's in the works and they'll be sponsored by Pornhub any minute.
I mean, the article is kind of jokey, and in the first paragraph, Men's Health refers to sponsoring, extreme sports it's the wild, wacky world of extreme sports sponsorship, which is kind of, I don't know, kind of trivializing the thing. But the article does point out the problem that these extreme, it's not even extreme sporters, it's people who do like individual sports, whether it be climbing or mountain biking or kayaking. They have a hard time raising money to do this, at any kind of elite level. And honestly, if it weren't for Red Bull, who would else be putting cash into kayaking right now?
I thought you were going with a different direction with that, which was to say that the people who pursue these sports have a hard time maintaining relationships, and so Pornhub is really a natural tie-in.
No, I don't know. Does this sport really need that kind of branding? I mean, honestly. Do we need? I mean, I don't know. I have kids. Maybe I'm just getting too old. I don't know. It just seems to me like it just seems more headache than it's worth. You know what I mean? I mean, do you want your kid? Grace, do you want your kids watching videos of the BDP crew with Pornhub life jackets? I mean, seriously. I mean,
you are getting old, Weld.
That's what I'm asking. You know what I mean?
Anyway, I don't know.
It's probably not any worse for you than drinking Red Bull.
No. To be totally honest, I think Lewis may have hit it right there. Anyway, I don't know. Whatever. We'll see how that all plays out. Pornhub will get over that. I mean, dude, net neutrality's done. Free porn's done. Their whole industry's shot. Porn will be part of your package that you get from Comcast from here on out. It'll be like the Entertainment Plus package. So moving on here, we also covered Dope Kayaks last episode. Weld.
You did?
Mm-hmm. And
I actually know this cat, George Younger. We sponsor George. He's a cool dude. I didn't know I didn't have anything to do with this.
Yeah, he was very appreciative of of IR and put in a nice message, and we plugged Dope Kayaks. They got a cool thing going on.
Yeah, I'll be honest. The email he wrote, my takeaway from it was that he seemed very beat down. He just was like down by paddling. Which I have a question for you, Grace, or Gelman, maybe even. Did you ever reach a point in your paddling career where you're just like, I can't, I gotta quit. I gotta get out of this.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever paddle like full time, like 300 days a year?
I did for about 8 years. Yeah.
I did for about 7 or 8 years too, where I was paddling between teaching in the U.S. and in Mexico and everything else I was doing. You know, I couldn't say, but close to 300 days a year. And after several years of it, I was ready to not do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that definitely there's lows and highs. That's for sure.
What happened? Tell me your story, Grace.
Like when I was ready to hang up the towel.
Yeah, where you just like, I just want a day where I just want a job where I'm just not soaking wet and kind of scared and I'm just like sick of living off of $8,000 a year and
yeah, that
did
never
you reach that point?
That was never what I was doing for a living never really kind of battered me down, but I did have a period in 2003, and I was on a trip to Mexico, and I had went to Norway that summer, and I'd been kayaking just super hard for a long period of time, and my body was just beat down. Like I was just like, I had shoulder problems. I had this like lower back injury that wouldn't go away. I got all this stuff, and I was like sitting there, and like it was a day in Mexico, and I just ran Tamata 1, Tamata 2, all down through that last section, and I woke up the next morning, and I was just like, oh my God, I can't take this. Like, my body can't take this. And definitely that kind of shifted that trip. It's not like I quit kayaking, but I definitely, I definitely realized that I had to like take a little time away, like a 6-week period, and go do something not kayaking and let your body heal. But I never was to the point where I was like, oh, like financially or whatever. It was like kind of a life change. It was like,
what were you doing for money then, though?
See, at that point I was still working for South Central Communications, so I would
so you still like a 40-hour week job?
Yeah, well, what I had to do, I had a really cool boss, and it was a really cool company. I knew some of the owners of the company. As long as I averaged 30 hours per week over the course of a calendar year, I could keep my full-time status and insurance and all of that stuff. So I would come, pick up extra shifts and do the whole 9 yards and work, 50-hour weeks for a period of time, and then I would have, 4 or 5 months off. 4 or 5 weeks off. So
what was grinding me down was working on the river. I was just punching in every day after day after day after day after day, year after year after year after year. Yeah,
I've never done that.
Geltman.
I felt like in the U.S. we were just losing slalom venues, and races were just being held more and more and more on these like easy, very, very flat courses, where I felt like I was, the strengths that I had were not helping me. Like I felt like I was always a pretty good whitewater paddler by the standards of slalom paddlers. And when we started having to race on, flat water all the time, there were people who would beat me who would never beat me on harder whitewater. And that just really annoyed me. And like fall 2003, Olympic trials for the next year, and they were supposed to be on the Ocoee. That was, where it was calendared on that 96 Olympic course, which is, by the standards of slalom, like pretty good whitewater course. And, I thought like I could do pretty well there. And, I don't know I can't recall exactly how this came to pass, but at the time it certainly seemed to me that it was through the incompetence of our governing body, USA Canoe Kayak at the time. They lost water. Like they couldn't get the TVA to give them a release to have a race on the Ocoee. So they moved the race. They moved the Olympic trials from the Ocoee to South Bend, Indiana, which is just like, oh God, it's awful. It's so flat. The water quality is awful. It's just right in the city. And I just, I had never had a good result there. I felt like I was generally incapable of having a result that would put me on the national team racing there. And I was just sort of like, if this is where the sport is going, it can go without me. and I stopped racing, went back and finished school, and like I had been paddling like 300 days a year at that point, and then when I quit racing slalom, I think just it took me a minute to kind of rediscover my enthusiasm for river running and for whitewater, and to get to really dive back in again. And so I think that was sort of the low point for me. And I think a lot of people have that when they quit racing. It's sort of, you go from training so hard and feeling so good in the boat, and you know that you're never going to feel that good in the boat again. Like you're never going to be able to, just like be as good or feel as good. And it's like a frustration when you get in the boat and you're like, I just don't feel the way I want to feel in the kayak right now. And
it's easier just to walk away. Like Chad Prentice just took up mountain biking.
Yeah, like a lot of people do that. But I think, for me, as I really started to kind of like get back into river running, it was like I was learning so much again about just running the shit that even if I didn't quite have the same athleticism or feel quite as sharp in the boat, I was just like learning so much, and everything was so fresh that made up for it, And so I think I really kind of hit my peak as a river runner like much later, like in my 30s for sure. So
what about you, Weld?
Well, first of all, I was never a serious racer, and I didn't train anywhere near as hard as Geltman, or certainly anyone else out there. But when I was building boats, I trained. I just started racing wild water and training wild water with Andy Bridge. Andy Bridge was my boss at Valley Mill Boats, and he was national and champion in C1 wild water and World Cup medalist and whatnot. But I was still training every day. For probably 2, maybe 3 years. 2 workouts a day. 4, 5, 6 days a week for years. Slowly getting better. And then we're doing a workout at this place called Widewater on the canal. And I can't remember the day, but it's been sometime 92, something like that. But a guy named Brian Parsons showed up, who's a slalom paddler who Lewis knows. And how would you describe Parsons as a slalom athlete?
Exceedingly talented, not necessarily the hardest worker.
Right. His younger brother Scotty Parsons went on to become probably one of the United States best slalom paddlers. Would you say? Oh
yeah, for sure. Like best of the generation.
Anyway, Brian, who was a very talented paddler, but like Geltman said, not training very hard, pretty much walked away from me in this workout, and I just got so mad that I quit. That was it. Done. I threw a complete snit. I never went back.
Do people use the word snit anymore? That's the ultimate snit.
That was a snit. That was that was as good a snit as you could get. That was it. No offense with Brian, it was totally me. Brian deserves way more credit than that for sure. But anyway, there you go. Let's move on to something else.
Well,
yeah, you guys accuse me of being Debbie Downer.
Well, right. Real quick before we move on, I think it's totally natural, and I know a lot of people, not just you, Lewis, and I know I've seen it just in the time that we've known each other and worked together well. There's like this ebb and flow that happens with your passion for the sport. It's like, and then,
sure.
You got to find what it is at that point that excites you. And if it was something that you were supposed to be doing or thought you were meant to be doing, but you're not into it anymore, then do something else. So,
the problem I have now is that, like, I don't want, like, I've been paddling long enough that I don't feel that motivated to go run, like the Upper Yak, as great as River is, or even the Upper Blackwater, because I run the Upper Blackwater hundreds of times, I wanted to do the harder whitewater, but at the same time, I'm just not paddling enough to feel comfortable going to paddle hard class 5. You know what I mean? Because I just don't want to get killed, And so I'm kind of in this weird situation that would be completely solved if I moved. You know what I mean? If I could move out west or even to Asheville, where we had the green nearby, and I was really engaged with a new river and a new location, because I've been here forever. I've been here for 25 years or whatever. You know what I mean? That's the rut I'm in. And it kind of sucks. Although it's being lifted somewhat because my kids are now paddling and doing the gully and stuff like that, so I'm getting back out. But it's the kind of what I really like to do. I'll be honest, I'm a little afraid to do right now,
No, I hear you. I really want to go into one more viewer mail here before we get into Josh and all of my batteries die. This one comes in. This one just came in from Matthias Fosted. Is that how you guys would say that? Hat tip to Matthias Fosted. This came at us by email.
Matthias Fostvet.
And this is on the lines of paddling and getting good at kayaking and whatnot. He says, I recently got into an interesting discussion with a much better paddler than myself who has been kayaking for probably close to 20 years. Both of us are from Idaho originally, but now living in Oregon, Washington. What that means is that we've both made the transition from, in quotes, Idaho big water to PNW creeking. Well, he has at least. I'm still working on it. Basically relearning how to kayak on this completely different style of whitewater. While running shuttle, we talked about how paddlers from Idaho routinely come out to the gorge and get humbled by the demanding creeking conditions. On the other hand, paddlers from the gorge come out to Idaho and just absolutely crush it on big water, and particularly the North Fork. Simply put, their skills easily transfer to our environment, while our skills do not. With all that said, I have two questions for you guys. Number one, why is it that creeking skills transfer to big water, but not vice versa? And number two, is the style of paddling found in the gorge the best place to hone your paddling skills for all styles of whitewater? Is there anywhere, he throws out Norway, that might mold even better paddlers? Super good email there. Who wants to take this one?
I mean, I think he has a point for sure. I don't know.
But why? But why?
I don't know. I'll tell you why I say that. Because growing up, we always felt like East Coast technical paddlers were better than people. Were always better paddlers than people running on big, pushy whitewater. You know, and we always used to use like Chris or Kelly Slater as an example. You know, learning how to surf on East Coast slop. You know, and really just having to work it. But that is definitely a prejudice.
Yeah, I would say that I think that he might be selling a little bit short how intimidating it is to go over to the North Fork for a lot of people from the Northwest. I mean, I think that, you know, when you're talking about, you know, the gorge, we just have like a really high concentration of really, really, really good kayakers, and not all of them necessarily, you know, a lot of them just kind of moved there relatively recently. And I mean, you definitely get better paddling there, but it's because you're paddling, you know, 200 plus days a year on class 5. And, you know, if you kind of move down a tier, you know, if you're not talking about like Aniol and Rush and Evan, but start talking about like the B team, you know, those guys go over to the North Fork and feel plenty humble over there for sure. But, you know, I think that at the levels that people are paddling in the Northwest, we're getting that push in kind of a creaky environment. But the one thing I always think about when I kind of move back and forth from that big water environment to, you know, paddling like on the Little White or something, is that the one thing that seems like you really need, like on the Little White, that you don't need so much on the North Fork, is like stroke timing. Like you need to be in the right place all the time on the North Fork, but you don't necessarily have to have like the right stroke. It's just like absolutely the right second, you know, with the exception of like Jake's, that everybody regards as like the hardest rapid for sure on the North Fork, right? Where you really need to kind of like pop your boat to get through Rodeo Hole and pop your boat to get through Rock Drop. It just seems like that element of stroke timing is something that you don't need as much on big water, or don't need as much on the North Fork. And I think that's my theory on what
I think that's a good point. I remember going to Sunshine for the first time and sort of being nervous ahead of it, but getting to that and thinking, if you had grown up paddling East Coast sort of steep whitewater, Sunshine is a move you should be able to do 1,000 times out of 1,000 times. You know what I mean? But that's just the stroke timing you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yep, I agree.
I don't know. That's my theory.
Yep. I can also say that, like currently right now, you know, if you're normally, you know, your normal stomping grounds are the North Fork of the Payette, how much water's in that river right now, and are you paddling? And if you live in the gorge, or you live like here right now, you can still be paddling every day. I think that there's that element as well. You know, you kind of take the seasonal factor out of it.
Totally. Like, I think if the North Fork were running at, you know, $2,000 plus 300 days a year, and you paddled that, and that was all you paddled, I think you could go anywhere in the world and just kill it.
Yeah, I think so too. So I think a lot of it comes with the seasonal, you know, it's a season. I know that a lot of times, just, you know, for me personally, in the last like 5 or 6 years, January, February, March is my paddling season. A good bit of the country is shut down during that time, and that's like when it's the best time for me to go. But I do agree that it takes I think if you're used to technical whitewater, hard whitewater, you can adjust to big volume whitewater a little quicker, because mainly it's just dealing with your fear versus really changing your technique. But I think if you're used to paddling big water, you have to significantly change your technique to handle technical stuff. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I don't know. I mean, I feel like you see guys who come out to the Northwest from, you know, the Southeast or Colorado, and get pretty humbled by the amount of water in the river. You know, I don't know.
At the same time, I've had numerous invitations to go to the Stikine, but I don't know, man. I look at the Stikine, I'm like, that doesn't look like something I've done before in my life, but I'd go to the Middle Kings in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I hear you.
Man, I feel like there's, I don't know.
Go ahead.
I mean, I feel like when I got to the Stikine, I got, you know, you like run entrance and you're like, I never run anything like that either. You know, it's like
right.
Just kind of its own thing. Like, you just get there and there's not places you can go and have that experience, but you know how to do it, you know?
Well, I think answer to number one is, if I had to answer, I'd say that more than the style of whitewater is the number of days on the water that it affords you to live in the gorge area versus the Payette. And number two, I don't know, you know, it's hard to beat the concentration of whitewater that's pretty close to year-round in the gorge. I mean, it freezes up in Norway. His second question.
That's true. I mean, I think we're talking about, like, this is what we've all been saying, is that on the East Coast we can just boat almost every day of the year. And same thing with pretty close where you are, Lewis. You know what I mean? That's really the thing.
Yeah.
You know.
That's my opinion. Practice makes perfect. Man.
All right. We're already, like, what? Are we 2 hours in?
Well, it doesn't matter because I'm at 32% battery on my computer, so we better get into our interview.
Dim your screen a little bit or something. All right, special guest. We have what, 30, 40 seconds for the special guest today?
Yeah, we've got a very small amount of time for our special guest. But before we do, mid-show sponsor, Kaleva. I finally figured out how to say it right after 3 spots. This is the 10th year of the Alsa Seca race, the steep creek race in Mexico on the legendary roadside section with over 20 different drops and waterfalls. Trained for a week learning the lines with Tom McEwen and Steve-O, preparing for race day on January 13th. There are 2 race courses, the short race open to everyone, the long race with the infamous Class 5 S-turn. Kaleva is proud to sponsor the best creek race in Mexico, and Steve-O's heard the Southeast boys say it's better than the green race. All the sponsors are going to start adding verbiage where they make me say it's better than the green race.
Canoe Kayak Magazine, it's better than the race.
The 8-day trip is based out of the Mexican-run eco resort. I say it wrong. Aventurec. Yeah, there you go. Hang out with paddlers from all over the world, enjoy homemade Mexican cooking, and the cervezas are cold too. The Alsa Seca race is January 6th through the 14th. Join us for a post-Christmas Class 3 plus Deep Canyons trip. I wonder where that's at. I
think that's on the Filobobos, I think.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
And then after the Alsa Seca race, you can stay for the Talapacoin Class 4 plus trip with the Narrow Grippin' Zone Dog. Check out the website, CALLEVA.org/Mexico, and type in your Hammer Factor promo code, and we'll throw $100 at your trip. So
we had the first descent on El Seca / Tomata.
You know what? We got to have we don't have time on this show, but
No, we don't.
I think that would be a really good one to talk about. Like, what an epic river to first descent.
It was crazy. It was crazy, given the time. And then that same trip, we did a tributary to the Fila Bobo. It's called Las Minas. Me and this guy named Ben. Fuck. I'm so pissed I can't remember his last name. Anyway, we did the first descent on this thing called Las Minas, which was awful. Awful. But that's for another day.
Grace, are you the first descentier of Tomata 2?
Jason Hale went right before me. I went second.
God damn, that's a big rapid, man.
It is a big rapid. God. All right, I think I'm trying to get Josh on here. We'll see if we can get Josh on the line. We are right now at 30% battery life and broadcasting through the hotspot on my phone. Josh, you there?
How's it going, guys?
Hey, what's up?
Good. You're on the Hammer Factor with Lewis Geltman, John Weld, and John Grace. Josh, real quick, I want to introduce you. Josh, you are 24 years old?
I'm 23 right now.
23 years old. You live in Richmond, Virginia. Is that correct?
I do.
And you have started a kayak company called VerusKayaks.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started Verus Kayaks.
Verus. Aha. That was one of our questions. What did I leave out of that intro that you would like our listeners to know?
Not too much. Just I'm really excited to be on the Hammer Factor. Thanks for having me on here. I was able to start the company a few years ago, and just had the vision of it sort of being by kayakers, for kayakers, and have really been happy with all the progress that's been made so far in the company.
And so
I looked at your website. You have whitewater boats, you have fishing boats, you have coolers. I mean, you're like a little mini Jackson kayak, except without the fun of the actual Jacksons involved. I guess the question I have right off the bat is, how did this come to pass? I mean, how do you look at kayaking and be like, yes, that's what I'm going to make? And I mean, how do you arrive at this point?
So I guess I could start at the beginning, where I'm from, sort of how all this started. When I was a kid, I was 12 years old. My parents sent me away to do expedition canoe trips up in Ontario, in Quebec, through an organization called Northwires and Langskib. And also, when I was a kid in middle school and high school, I was in a program called Formula One in schools. So I was designing 1/20th scale Formula One cars, and I had a great mentor at that time, Chris Morris, who really taught me a lot about CAD design, how to make things, doing some CNC work, 3D printing. And I sort of got a base for it there. And I started kayaking when I was 16. And 3 years later, I started designing boats when I was 19 years old. And when I originally started this, it was more of an archaic process. I worked with Sean Alexander, who owns Fall Line Canoes here in Richmond, Virginia. And we started cutting up bits of boats and pieces of plastic and welding things together. And I was really able to see what worked with a boat and what didn't. And it was just a way to sort of get into it and to start designing boats. And I could go to Z-Dam here in Richmond, go paddle the James, go swing up to West Virginia and paddle the Golly, and sort of see how the boat did. After that, I made my first plug for this play boat. And I knew that in order to get this made professionally, or to have it done well, I needed to find somebody who could make these products. And I'm also, while doing this all, I'm currently in business school here at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. So I wanted to start a kayaking company while going to school. So I went overseas. I went to China to find a company to work with, and I was lucky enough that there's a company there that was that I first started working with, and took that plug made a fiberglass mold and pushed out the first few carbon Kevlar boats. So that's how it all sort of started.
So you started in the carbon Kevlar space, and then you kind of expanded into the rotomolded space after that?
Yeah, last January I really wanted to push on getting an actual plastic river runner and creeker made. And I know that's sort of where all whitewater kayaks are for the most part. It's hard to use composite boats on a lot of the rivers around the southeast and just in general.
So, are all your boats are made in Asia? The composite boats and the polyethylene boats?
Yes, they are. They're made in China right now, in southern China. And when I went over there, I was also fortunate enough to meet a businessman from Australia, and he produced fishing kayaks. And he was just kind enough that we were able to trade some molds, and that's how I've been able to offer, some SUPs, fishing kayaks, and I've been able to sort of expand all my whitewater boats in that time.
So how do you position your company? I mean, you have a bit of project ahead of you in terms of selling boats that's in a market dominated by, 2 or 3 brands. What's your plan there?
Starting off, I just wanted to make boats that I really wanted to paddle, and I drew a lot of influence from some of the old school designs as well as some new breakthrough designs that have come out in the last couple of years. I just see a huge grassroots movement in the southeastern United States right now. I've seen a lot of paddlers in western North Carolina, some of the Long Creek Boys, and events like the Green River Rodeo. And I just see these people in this area revolutionizing paddling by taking all those boats that were meant to just do as many cartwheels as you could in a hole and utilize those boats for enhanced downriver play. And I really want to make boats for these people. I've got 2 friends that have sort of come along on Verus Kayaks, Matt McGee and Corey Sheehan. And they've been paddling for the team too and are really invested in the designs, and they've been a huge help as well. Sort of being able to meet some of these people in those regions.
Do you understand those markets? In preparation for this, we were kind of talking about a couple other companies who, a lot like yours, where it's just young guys, young kayakers getting in and started to make kayaks. Do you feel like you're part of a movement going on and of 20-something boaters starting in new kayak companies? Do you think there's a larger movement of that in the U.S. going on right now, or?
I really do believe so. I think it's coming back. As much as I'd love for this to be like late 90s, early 2000s, starting a kayaking company, I do think there is a new community of people my age that are coming out and boating.
Yeah, I'm talking about just being a designer, like actually making boats. We had a couple of people lined up, and even people like Adam Masters from Bellyac, or we had a couple other people we were talking with who weren't quite ready to come on the show yet. But
to my knowledge, I'm one of the only people my age that's sort of designing boats and doing it in this way right now. But I think there are maybe a few other people out there like myself who just haven't quite come forward or aren't quite there with their designs yet.
Do you feel like I'm probably, this is maybe a marketing question, but do you think, do you feel like some of these companies like Dagger or Jackson are just kind of maybe resting on the laurels a little bit in terms of boat design? You can come in and maybe offer an energy that's not currently there.
Exactly. The next boat that I'm working on right now is creating sort of this slicey play boat. And that's a plug that I just started working on a few weeks ago. And I think there is that energy, and I really want to hone in on it and expand upon it. I do think that those 3 companies are a little stagnant with some of their designs, and that's where I sort of want to step in and have designs that are unique in myself that sort of revolutionize what's out there currently.
Right. What's your sales model? Will you be selling direct or going to retailers, or what's your thought there?
Right now, just as small as it is, and you can see at the website, I am just selling direct. I have a few small retailers, but over the next couple of months, in January and February, I really would like to go approach some more retailers about having some of my products in their stores.
Right.
What's your number one model right now?
My number one model right now is my River Runner, the Swift. I've sold a few of those, as well as I have a fishing kayak, the Catawba, that's sold pretty well, and it's provided a nice like financial base for the business. So fortunate for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think about? I mean, I guess I'm looking at sort of do you see the fact that these other guys are all making these boats in the U.S. as an Achilles heel, or do you think that's a benefit for them? And would you ever see yourself rotomolding on your own?
That'd be the real goal. I'd love to have a place here in Virginia where I was rotomolding on my own, but just starting out where I can go and get a production run of these boats done, or a small run, and be able to sell them and market them has been really useful for myself, especially with the sort of capital that I have to start this business.
Yeah. What's the I mean, so you think it's more cost effective to make a kayak for yourself than it is to make it in Asia? Yourself here in the U.S. than it is to make it in Asia?
I not necessarily. I see the prices as probably about being the same.
Mm-hmm. How many boats can you fit in a container?
How many boats can I? If it's a 20-foot container, I can fit about 50 boats in it.
Is that whitewater boats or the fishing boats, or is that kind of average?
Combination of the both.
Okay.
But whitewater boats, yeah, I can fit. In a 40-foot, I can fit about 85, 90 boats.
And so, would you say that the ultimate goal is to sort of become one of these big top manufacturers, or do you see yourself kind of filling more of like a niche market for kind of, I don't know, like forgotten design influences or more progressive kayaks, or where do you see it going? Like, I feel like, I just keep thinking about like what Corin's doing with trying to, it seems like what he's mainly trying to do is offer people the opportunity to have their own ideas built, and it seems like I see some parallels with what you're doing here. Like, I don't know, what's the vision?
I definitely see some parallels between what Corin and I are doing right now, and I really do respect sort of the new designs he's coming out with. They are way different than those sort of three major companies you were talking about, Weld. I see it right now as starting out small, starting making these products and sort of creating this grassroots movement, but I would like to see it move up into the spot where I'm competing with Dagger, Jackson.
So you're not just gonna be a whitewater brand. Your goal is to be a complete one-stop shop for paddle sports.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the business school stuff is helping?
I do. I think it's helping a little bit, sort of understanding how to do this. But nothing could really prepare you for, just you gotta start somewhere and tearing in and working on a plug, or going to meet with somebody in a different country and talk about starting boat production. School didn't quite prepare me for that, I don't think, but it has a lot of other great unintended benefits as well.
Like when you place an order for a boat in China, what's the minimum order? Like, what kind of numbers do they look at for you before they'll even turn on those tools?
So even with like having an aluminum mold done, it's really about the shipping container. It all comes down to just having a 20-foot shipping container. You have to have about 40 boats that you can put in and bring back across.
They don't mind making 40 boats at a pop for you?
They don't mind it at all. And then, if I come back in 10 months or whatnot and get another batch made, they're absolutely fine with it.
And how's the quality? Do you think it's pretty good?
I think it's absolutely excellent. I lived there for 3-4 months and went through every step of it with them, going over every detail of the boat, how it's made, what materials are we using, and I've been able to bring them back and test them here and test them extensively over the last couple of years before I've been sort of putting any information out about the company. So it's definitely a product I really stand behind, and the quality is absolutely great. I also have to say that I just want to give just a little bit of a rave. I really enjoyed your Made article that you wrote, Weld, on Site Z. It's so well done, and it really is similar to what I'm doing and sort of the vision of my company as well. So
no question. Yeah. There's a lot, except I don't know much about boat, large scale boat production. There's a reason why these guys make their boats in the U.S. And it has to be a financial one, I would guess. But I've never really dug it into it enough to figure out why that is. You know what I mean? when so many other things are made offshore.
Absolutely. When I first went out to get some of these boats made, I looked around the U.S. And there wasn't anybody that was really able to produce them here. So that's why.
Well, early on, you probably know this, but early on, Liquid Logic started as a design company, and they were outsourcing the production to Remcon Plastics in somewhere in Pennsylvania. But because there was two companies involved, no one was making any money. I mean, there was a lot more to that story than that, but that was definitely one problem. You know what I mean? Remcon wasn't making any money, and Liquid Logic wasn't making any money, and the stores weren't making any money. So I could see that not working. You know what I mean? I think these guys are rotomolding in-house because they couldn't afford to do it otherwise. But they don't make them in Asia. There's no question about that. You know what I mean? I've never been able to quite figure out why they don't do that, because at least on the garment side, running a factory is not the same thing as designing a garment. I mean, running a factory is a pain in the butt. Or it's not a pain in the butt. It's just a completely different kind of job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think the guys at Liquid Logic and sort of the challenges they have keeping an oven running 24/7 or however they have to produce all the boats that they do, that is a completely different challenge than more the design and sort of brand management that I've started and been able to do at this company.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the question is, I don't know. For us, it's been, it's the model in our industry is that you're a garment design company and that's all you do. You don't even bother touching with the manufacturing of it because manufacturing is so varied and so expensive. But I mean, you seem to go sort of more in the traditional boat market where you were going to make everything yourself, which is, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know. I'd love to learn. I'd love to see the numbers on that, and not in a questioning, doubtful way. It's a fascinating thing for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, it seems like at some point there's a group of older boat designers. I mean, they have to at some point start phasing out. I mean, Shane Benedict can't be designing boats forever. I guess you're the next generation, right? Is that the plan?
I guess I would say I'm a part of this next generation of guys that's out there sort of designing boats. And I've learned so much from all the designs that those guys have put out between Warren and Shane. Perception Whippet, the Glide that Corin produced. They've really done a lot of boats that I've drawn a lot of inspiration on. And I just see this as like following through and being able to manipulate and sort of revolutionize kayaking in a different way than they sort of saw it.
Right.
What's been through this journey? What's been the hardest part?
I'd say the hardest part was knowing where to start. I had no idea where to start at, and then getting boats made and figuring out international shipping, and just ensuring that the quality of these boats was going to be great. The initial challenge was Sean Alexander. He taught me an immense amount about boat design, so I was really fortunate there. It just took a very, very long time. I think I'm somebody that really wants to start a project and have it finished 2-3 months later. And with producing a boat or something like that, it's an 8-month sort of span, a year-long span before I have an actual design done.
It takes some time.
So how do you pay for all this, if you don't mind me asking? Or how do you plan on paying for it going forward,
Absolutely. Right now, I was fortunate enough that took some of my savings. My parents were able to help me, a few other family members, and a few other investors that have sort of come in, and I've been able to have those people support me as well. So for what it is, I think I've kept the overhead very, very low, and have really made the most of the money I've invested into it so far and put into it.
Well, we're going into 2000.
Do you think at some point you're going to need to bring in some outside money?
Right now, I'd like to. I don't really want to bring in too much outside money. It's been nice that I've sort of been able to do this by myself, and kept the equity in the company itself. But I'm at the point now where I'm asking for pre-orders on my new design that I have out, the Gladiator, and that's how I'm hoping a lot of the funding for my business can come. I understand that it's hard for people at first to sort of put money down on a boat they haven't seen, and things like that. But I think just based on the quality sort of the information I've been able to provide. The design itself, I think a lot of people interested in getting.
Yeah, it looks like you're looking for how many boat orders to get the thing off the ground?
I just needed 20 boat orders to get the Gladiator off the ground itself.
And how are we doing? We close?
We're getting there. I have sort of a set deadline that it'll end like just right before Christmas, the pre-orders, and I'm at like around 6-7 right now, so I'm hoping I can make it.
Very cool. Well, what's 2018 look like for you?
2018, I'll be graduating in the springtime, so hopefully this will be my full-time endeavor now, and I'll be releasing some more information. Hopefully get a bunch of boats in to your local retailer here in the next couple of months, work on designing this new slicey boat, getting the Gladiator into production, and just trying to grow from here, seeing what's possible with Verus Kayaks, and if the market's really ready for it, and if everybody's willing to support this and support the sort of goal and dream I have with it.
Are you going to Oklahoma to the paddle sports show?
Yes, I'm definitely planning on going to Oklahoma this year.
If you're going to sell stores, that's the place to be, I suppose.
Looking forward to it.
Very cool. Does anybody else have anything for Josh?
No, it's interesting. You know, I mean, honestly, who would think about? I just didn't think anyone was looking at kayaking and being like, "Man, that's what I want to do, and I'm going to do it." Like you hear like Isaac Levinson talk about doing it, but it never quite got off the ground, and that's the closest I've seen of someone actually coming to actually making a new. I mean, Corin, but Corin's always up to something, you know.
Yeah, and this one snuck way under the radar. I mean, look at all the models that are available for purchase right now. And when did this start? When did you have your first boat in Richmond, Virginia?
I had my first boat here about 3 years ago when I produced my first Volant and had it done.
About two years ago.
Right on, man. I wish you luck.
Yeah.
I want to see more of this. I feel like kayaking could use like a nice proliferation of boat designers, and just it's cool to see lots of people trying new things, and I hope you guys succeed.
I think, I mean, you were talking about the early or late 90s, you know, or a little bit earlier. I think we're starting to see a, you know, maybe not an explosion of growth, but there's just a lot more energy in whitewater in the past couple of years, I feel like. Don't you guys? Is that?
I don't know. To me, I wonder if maybe, you know, we like talk about kind of the glory days of boat progression back when there was so much home building going on, and, you know, manufacturing was, you know, something that, you know, you could make a paddleable kayak in your own garage, like that you would, you know, a boat that you'd want to paddle on, the whitewater you would want to run. And then it got to a point where the manufacturing, you know, sort of capital costs of building the boats that you wanted to paddle, because you wanted to paddle a polyethylene boat to run the shit, you know, it got out of reach for, you know, somebody wanting to just start on their own. And so maybe that's an upside to manufacturing in Asia, is maybe it becomes, you know, maybe it lowers the initial capital investment you need to, you know, start down this road. And maybe we'll see more people who are able to kind of put their ideas into the water somewhere. So I think that's cool.
Let me ask you this, Josh. I'll throw this out to you too. Well, do you see, you know, you're talking about this kind of new, you know, group of designers and companies, and, you know, just different visions for what a kayak could be. Do you think there could be room for a manufacturer in the U.S. to not be so brand centric and make boats for people like Josh and make boats for other people, like one factory that's making several different brands instead of you have the Dagger factory, the Jackson factory, the Liquid Logic?
Well, I mean, I think that the contract manufacturing thing is kind of what I was talking about with Remcon. I don't know if there's enough money in there to do it unless you're selling boats direct.
The thing is,
if you have a wholesale price built into the price of a boat, you're going to have to make that boat yourself.
Yeah, but I
think the way we always talked about, like, you know, we were always like, why isn't somebody manufacturing blow molded boats like Preon is? Like, why isn't anybody doing that in the U.S.? And what the answer I always got was, if you had a blow molding machine and you were using it to make kayaks, you were just like pissing money into the wind, like that you could be making something else, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, I think there could be a potential for something like that. I think the reason the Rimcon thing never worked out is because
That's a long, complicated story.
That's a long, complicated story, but
I think the foundation of the problem was there were too many companies taking a piece of the margin.
Yeah. Well, I just think that, like, in RimCon's sake, they were making trash cans and they were making whatever, and it was hard for them to retool the ovens and bring in the different molds and whatever. But I think if you just focused on making high-end polyethylene designs, rotomolding them, that there could be room for you to...
You can't, because as a company, you're looking at, say you're trying to make a 50% gross margin. I mean, RemCon's going to want to make that, and Verus is going to want to make that, or, I'm sorry, Verus is going to want to make that, and then the retailer wants to make that. You know what I mean? I mean, every step of the way, you can't have people making a 40% margin, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless the boats cost $3,000, you know?
You need about 4 other versions of me all working together, sort of with their own brands. But then it's, one brand, does better than the other brands. It's like if I was to ask Liquid Logic if they wanted to get some of my boats made, they would probably be like, well, we don't really want to compete with your business or add a new company in this market, so why would we let you get
we get approached to make spray skirts for other people all the time, you know what I mean, like skirts with different people's brands on it, and we could make 10 times as many skirts as we're making right now with other people's brands on it, but we wouldn't make any money on those skirts, you know what I mean? They'd want to buy it for essentially what we're paying for them.
Yeah, but you're not a manufacturer. Anyway, I mean, there's a cost of goods sold that comes out of a factory, and I think if you could fill that oven time by making kayaks, you could support it. That's just my thought. But we disagree, Mr. Weld.
Well, we disagree because you're wrong. I think that's not much more to it than that. We got into it.
Well,
I mean, here's another question for you. Since you're here, it's been my observation that there has never been a successful whitewater boat company. Standalone whitewater boat company in the U.S. I mean, you go Dagger, Waysport, Jackson. Every single one of them has either had to diversified into fishing kayaks and SUP or whatnot, or they've been bought by a bigger company. Every single one of them.
And that's sort of the model that I am following. I think it's hard. I don't think there's.
But you're not. Are you a fisherman?
No, I can't say that.
You love fishing kayaks? No, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, to me, we need a core whitewater boat company, that's just whitewater.
That's what I'd really like to do. I just need to make sure I've got a financial base before, I could bring production here or just do whitewater boats. I just want to have the financial base to get it off the ground to sort of do that. That is the dream. You
could make a little chart and sort of document the 4 or 5 things that all these failures had in common, and there are a few things they all have in common. I think it is financially possible to do a standalone whitewater company, but you'd have to break a few traditional rules.
Very feasible. I feel like I could be on the verge in the next 6-12 months. So, but
Yeah, I mean, IR has been a standalone whitewater company since the beginning and has not been an easy road, for sure. We could have made a lot more money making other stuff, but so I don't know if that's something you really want to do. I'd think about it.
I'm sure you've done government contracts, all 9 yards, but that is part of what makes IR great for sure, is that you guys have stood by that.
What's irangler.com?
That's run by Spencer Cook.
Okay. Well, Josh, my battery's at 8% here. We're gonna have to let you go, but we'll check back with you in a year. I'm super excited for you and super rad, dude.
Very interesting story. We have a couple more people lined up. We had talked about in preparation for the show that are sort of in a similar situation, and I'd like to hear from them too. Maybe do a roundtable at some point. You know what I mean? See where we're all at.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, and Adam Masters, whose dad was Bill Masters, the founder of Perception, who's a character and a half. But Adam sure would be. Do you know Adam? You guys know Adam?
Oh yeah, I know Adam.
No.
Super good dude.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, super cool guy. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
I'm gonna take that Gladiator for a spin here after the new year. So.
Oh, you should go buy and see Steel and go grab that thing.
I will. I will, man. So thanks for coming on.
All right.
Cool.
You guys have a good one.
All right. Well, very good. That was super cool.
Yeah, interesting, man.
All right, guys. We gotta wrap this daddy up, or it's not gonna happen. So Ladies and gentlemen, your favorite section of the show, Rants and Raves.
Coming up next, coming up soon, ladies episode, any minute. All right. Anonymous boat review guy is on deck to come back.
Yeah,
right?
he's
better audio quality.
He's fired up. He's working on his system. So we got mixed reviews. I liked anonymous boat review guy. He was kind of hard to understand.
What bad reviews did we get besides the audio quality, which was an obvious issue?
People just were like, there was a few.
I think it's a diamond in the rough.
I think I was just laughing so hysterically that I didn't have an opportunity to tell him why he was wrong.
So the other thing we need a European anonymous boat review guy to review all the European boats that are out there that we never talk about, like Spade and the rest of these.
No, you're 100% right on that one. We are slacking on that one.
Yeah. So if we could get someone from Europe who wants to contribute an anonymous boat review about all these boat companies in Europe to give us the straight dope on that, I think that'd be really cool.
Okay, moving on. Rants and Raves, we've really got to do this. My battery is going to die. Okay. I'm sorry to cut you guys off. I won't.
Up here.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and open up. And I'm right about the manufacturing thing, and time will tell on that.
No, you're not.
Well, so
you're so wrong.
Listen, you're wrong. I'm right. I'm handsome. You're ugly. Whatever. Right. Anyway, we digress. I want to get into a rave. I'm going to rave about my wife, who is taking off tomorrow to run across 30 miles, 10,000 feet of climbing, the Art Loeb Trail, and my rave is for coming up with an adventure and following through. So I'm just going to rave about that. She doesn't listen to the show.
It's like hashtag I love my wife.
Yeah, pretty much. She's getting ready to crush it.
When you get divorced. This is like the thing you do right before you get divorced.
Jesus.
Oh, man.
Love you, baby. Love you. Love you. Okay. And we will get back into this boat discussion when I have more battery life.
In fact, I just put two and two together. You're doing this because these accusations are about to come out about from the interns. You're trying to get in front of that story in a big way. I gotcha. All right, Gelman, what do you got?
Are you guys familiar with these websites? We had this conversation. We were doing some planning here yesterday, and we were looking at this website, this company that I'm not going to name. But it's like they're like
ACA?
Sort of like no. This is don't get me in any trouble. Well, we love ACA. It's this website for this business that like it has like I don't know like some like hipsters like curating sort of vaguely outdoorsy clothing, and it's like if you don't know what to buy, you go to this website and they tell you what they're.
Yes.
Oh my god, dude! It's like. It's just the whole aesthetic is like the most smarmy Instagram stuff you've like ever seen. It's like the male equivalent of SoCality Barbie.
Right. And it's like here's like a plaid wool button-up shirt called the Truman.
Yeah, and it costs $300. And it's like
I see so much of that it makes me want to vomit.
It makes me want to vomit. It's like it has this like veneer of outdoorsiness and like this like faux environmentalism.
Right.
And it's like not only is it just consumerist and appalling, but it's like they're taking our lifestyle and it's like people who are like casting for like the made-for-TV movie about what we're actually doing.
And not only that,
going and getting rad, we're working on environmental shit. And then there's like some guy with his like perfectly coiffured beard.
If you went
selling some $300 shirt for some Portland hipster to wear to brunch, and
if you went to Asia, if you went to Asian garment factories and saw how easy it is to make that stuff and how cheap it is, you'd be even more nauseated. You go into these showrooms and they're just like, you just point to something and be like, I want this, except I want it in heather green and this, and like done. Like pearl buttons on, like fine. Where do you want your logo? I mean, that's how easy it is.
I'm just disgusted. It's like, all right, that's all I got.
That's a good one, Lewis. I like it.
Yeah, I see that all the time. It's that scratches me where I itch.
4%.
All right, I'm gonna rave today, and I'm gonna rave about John Grace.
What?
And I've been thinking about that yes, I am. I don't think you're a very, your own weird way. You're a very humble guy, but you've run some pretty big fucking whitewater in your day. done some pretty amazing things in a boat, and I don't know that people really know that anymore about you. And I want to make sure that they do.
Well, thanks, man.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a loose decade there. That was good times.
You're pretty influential. I mean, you pretty influential boater for sure.
Well, I love kayaking, and I try to not keep it. I try to not take it too serious.
That's good. It's a good thing.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, are we going to try and do... Okay, so if we're going to try and do one more of these shows before 3%, if we're going to try and do one more of these shows before the new year, do we want to just do a best of show?
What does that mean?
I mean, I can just...
I have to go to I'm going to Peru on the 22nd, so...
Maybe we should just call it until after the new year. What do you guys think?
I'll do one more, but I just have to do it before the 22nd.
I could do it next Thursday.
Can you do it next
I got to
Thursday?
jump, though. I got to get on a call about suing Trump over monuments.
You are the man.